Ask the average WWE fan what the main problem with the company is these days and you'll get a veritable smorgasbord of different reasons, one of which will definitely be that everything is just way too scripted. WWE, those nasty little authoritarians, exercise complete control over almost every aspect of a character and their act. It's understandable, but at the same time, pretty frustrating, and had everything been so tightly controlled back in the day, some of wrestling's most famous moments may never have even happened. I'm Andy for WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 spontaneous wrestling decisions that became famous. Number 10. The entire Razor Ramon character. So you all know Scott Hall, right? One of the most charismatic wrestlers of all time, among the best wrestlers to never win the WWE Championship, and yet when Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson met with Hall to discuss his character in the early 90s, they originally wanted him to play a lame military gimmick. Taken aback by the guff that was being presented to him, Hall presented his own idea off the cuff, telling WWE management about this little movie he'd seen named Scarface. Don't know if you've heard of that one, but it stars this little bloke named Al Pacino as Tony Montana, Hannah's dad, living in this big mental house in Miami, doing all kinds of drugs. All Hall needed was a name. He went to Tito Santana of all people for that, and with the Razor part all sewn up, the former El Matador helped him come up with the Ramon surname. The rest is history, but good grief, can you imagine how things might have turned out if Hall was presented as Colonel Claptrap or General Gash instead of Razor Ramon? Number 9. The pipe bomb. The CM Punk debate is an argument that will never be settled, but one thing we can all agree on is that justifiably or otherwise, Chick Magnet Phil was a very frustrated person during the later periods of his WWE tenure, and of course, this manifested itself brilliantly on the June 27th, 2011 edition of Monday Night Raw. This was the night Punk dropped his infamous pipe bomb. It's perhaps the greatest work shoot in wrestling history, but while it was very much part of the scheduled programming, not all of it was 100% planned or scripted. Sitting down and crossing his legs, Punk looked like a martyr willing to risk unemployment just for the sake of airing his grievances. It's now the stuff of legend, and as he mentioned everything from New Japan Pro Wrestling to Colt Cabana, the McMahons were his prime targets. Punk was on fire. That spontaneous anger was infectious, and it led to the most fruitful period of Punk's WWE career. Number 8. Mr. Socko. Mick Foley might be the only man on the planet who could take a sweating, minging sock from his sweating, minging sack, shove it down a guy's throat, and actually get it over. But he did. Credit to him, because his natural likability and inherent charisma made him one of the most beloved wrestlers ever, and Mr. Socko was one of WWE's most beloved bits. Now, I'll admit Mick had already been using the mandible claw as one of his main finishing holds from the moment he debuted the Mankind character. The OG idea was that he would insert his fingers into the opponent's mouth, causing a paradoxical feeling of agony and paralysis. It sounded and looked scary, so of course Mick did the natural thing and started wearing a sock for it. Cool. As Mankind became more and more popular, Foley decided to draw a face on said sock, and thus Mr. Socko was born. An act as simple as pulling a sock from his pants would regularly blow the roof off of buildings full of fans, and that's pretty awesome. Number 7. Bret screwed Bret. Another wrestling debate that will never be settled, the Montreal Screwjob is pretty damn notorious. So notorious, it makes Christopher Wallace look like Christopher Biggins. And it's difficult to ever see anything topping the controversy caused in the Survivor Series 1997 WWE title match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. In calling for the bell while the Hitman was still stuck in his own sharpshooter, Vince McMahon had essentially screwed over one of his most cherished talents on his way over to WCW. The wrestling world was stunned, and Bret's career was never the same again. Somewhere down the road, McMahon made the spontaneous decision to capitalize on the hatred. That famous phrase, Bret screwed Bret, was born when Vince gave an interview with Jim Ross on WWE television. With that one line, he went from mild-mannered announcer Vince McMahon to Mr. McMahon. His most famous character was born, the Attitude Era was ushered in, and some people still argue that Bret screwed Bret to this very day. Number 6. That little kick at the beginning of the Stone Cold Stunner. If you don't know how the Stone Cold Stunner works, you should probably hand in your wrestling fan card right now. It's often said that Michael Hayes introduced Steve Austin to his famous finisher back in 1996. Up to that point, Austin had been using the $1 Million Dream, which was a hand-me-down from former manager Ted DiBiase, but he decided he needed something a little bit more killer in order to shoot up the rankings. The Stunner was perfect for this, but there was just one problem. It had no real setup. It came out of nowhere like a proto-RKO, but that move had a flashy nature to it that the Stunner just lacked in its early days. Knowing this, Austin decided to add a simple kick to the gut right at the start. It gave fans an indication as to when it was about to be performed, and it gave opponents a chance to counter it, and most of all, it became a critical part of the move's success. Number 5, Jim Duggan's 2x4. Old Hacksaw experimented with a bunch of different things before finally breaking out in wrestling, but nothing really worked despite his obvious talents between the ropes. This all changed when he was approached by Bruiser Brody backstage one day, encouraging him to get a signature weapon. It's said that the fans in the building that night were particularly wild, and Brody just thought it would be a good idea for Big Jim to have his own form of protection. Duggan grabbed a big old plank of wood, and he'd rarely hit the ring without the 2x4 ever again. It became synonymous with his act almost overnight. To this day, it's still the most famous piece of wood in wrestling, beating Joey Ryan's Willie into second place. Number 4, the Flair Flop. Imagine being a non-wrestling fan and seeing a Flair flop for the very first time. It must be one of the most ridiculous things ever, giving ammo to those tedious dweebs who still say things like, "You know it's fake, right?" It's one of Ric Flair's signature spots, but something he didn't exactly put a lot of thought into. Interviewed by Steve Austin, Flair revealed that he just randomly did it one time because he thought it would be funny. Turns out he was right, and the Flair flop became a beloved part of his entire act. Yes, it's daft as hell, but if Flair shows up, you kind of want to see him do a flop. Maybe not these days. Don't want the poor fella hurting himself after all. Number 3, You Can't See Me. Big Banter John Cena debuted his famous gesture on Velocity of all shows back in 2003. It became his signature, and it started as a dare by his brother, who just told him as a joke to do it on live television. Apparently, this was because him and John used to do it as part of some goofy dance routine back at home, and his brother just wanted a bloody good laugh. Cena waved his hand in front of his face on Velocity and probably thought nothing else of it, but after doing it a few more times, it really started to catch on. You Can't See Me is still an important part of John's act today. It's mad to think that this was a split-second decision by Cena purely to pop his brother, but it became something with mass appeal and must now be considered one of the most imitated gestures in wrestling history. Number 2, Know Your Role. From The Undertaker's weird goth henchman to awful commentator that precisely nobody liked, JBL has played a lot of different roles throughout his WWE career. His stint as a network interviewer is among the less, celebrated, but a 2016 edition of Legends with JBL featuring Ron Simmons yielded this tasty nugget. During the interview, they touched on an early part of The Rock's career when he turned heel and joined Simmons in the Nation of Domination. Ron and Rocky were backstage going through a script when Simmons told him that he needed to know his role in a particular segment. The Rock, keen to make an impact, decided to use the phrase to his advantage. He just threw it out there in a promo one night and Simmons laughed, realizing where his younger peer had taken it from. Of course, it was later expanded to become Know Your Role and Shut Your Mouth, a key catchphrase for The Rock, and one that was super important in getting him over. Now, he'd have probably become a megastar regardless, of course, but having a little hook like this was very important for Rocky at the time, and it even gave WWE a perfect subtitle for their SmackDown 2 video game back when it came out in 2000. And at number 1, Austin 316. It's June 1996. We're at a hospital in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Steve Austin has just rushed out of the building after getting his mouth stitched up. He'd had his gob lacerated by a wayward kick from Mark Mero, but he just had to get back to the arena in time because he was set to face Jake Roberts in the King of the Ring final, so off he rushed. Upon returning to the arena, Austin asked Michael Hayes what Roberts has said in his promo on Steve earlier in the night. Hayes told him that Jake the Snake had ran his usual Bible spiel, reciting John 3:16. Now the wheels immediately started turning in Austin's head, and soon his iconic King of the Ring victory speech was born. It's now one of the most famous lines in wrestling history. WWE soon created a simple t-shirt bearing the slogan. It became the biggest seller in company history, a key part of the Stone Cold gimmick, and one of the most ingenious pieces of marketing off the cuff in wrestling history.
Hello, What Culture? My name is Simon Miller, and today I have an announcement so big, so huge, it's gonna shatter the very foundations of your life to the point you may need to phone up a friend and say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I have just heard the news. Have you heard the news? They'll probably say, no, I haven't heard the news, but you're already on the phone to them. You've already connected with them, so I would appreciate it if you either tell them the news or send them to this video. Thanks. So what is the news? Well, it's nice and simple. I've heard you out there. I've seen you've been commenting. I've read your tweets. And I can now officially let you know that if you do enjoy Raw ups and downs, if you do enjoy SmackDown ups and downs, that now you'll be able to set your watches to them. You'll be able to make notes in your calendars because we're gonna have an official time for when they're gonna go live. I know, massive. So Ups and Downs for Raw will go live at 2 p.m. GMT, that's British time every Tuesday, and they will go live at 2 p.m. GMT every Wednesday for SmackDown. So you don't have to be aimlessly walking around anymore going, what do? I want to know what got up and what got down and what Seth Rollins did or what AJ Styles is up to. Now you know, 2 p.m. GMT Tuesday, 2 p.m. GMT Wednesdays, Ups and Downs coming at you in the face. I realize what I just said, retract that, keep moving on, and I hope to see you there soon. And I hope that we build an audience so big that if I ever wanted to march an army anywhere in the world, I could, and we'd call it the Ups and Downs Army, because I haven't come up with a better name. So yes, just to reiterate, Raw Ups and Downs, 2 p.m. GMT Tuesday, SmackDown Ups and Downs, 2 p.m. GMT Wednesday. I cannot wait to bring this brand new era in, and unlike other brand new eras, I've already let you know exactly what you can expect to see. Come on, 2019, Kenny Omega, I don't know where he's going, but you do know and you can always rely on Ups and Downs.